Hello and welcome to the United Way. Danny here, and we're going to dive into all things Manchester United. Now, I want this first video on this channel to start by being totally honest. I've been a United fan since the age of 4. I'm now 27, and this video is not reactionary. It's not just a bad week. It's not a bad month. I wish it was a bad year, but it's far from that. This is just a terrible time to be a Manchester United fan, and it has been for years. And I feel week on week I'm just watching what was Manchester United fade away. And from when I was born, I was built on the years of Sir Alex Ferguson, where it was leadership, courage, fight, determination, like all of these words that we associated to Manchester United. And let's be honest, like Sir Alex Ferguson wasn't just a manager. He was and still is in many ways Manchester United, and perhaps maybe that's some of our undoing. That's maybe some of our problem. But at the end of the day, that's what Manchester United was, and that's what we were built on. And it seems that's what we're going to try and continue to do. So if that's the case, let's dive into this, because right now, this is not Manchester United. Now, if we look back since Fergie's actually left United, which was, I think, 2013, 2014, it's been a constant cycle of change. Whether that's changing manager, whether that's changing board level. You look at Woodward, you've got Arnold, since, we've got Barada, we've got Wilcox, we had Dan Ashworth for about 3 months before he got kicked out. And I wish he was still there, because it feels like we need him right now. You had the potential sale of Man United, which never really happened. Let's be honest, the Glazers still have, 75% ownership of the club. They still own Manchester United. Radcliffe ultimately is a puppet for them, and is making a mockery of Manchester United right now with the decisions he's made. If you look since he's come in, he wants to build a new stadium, right? And he's constantly talking about a new stadium, this evolution project. I love Old Trafford. Rebuild Old Trafford. Get it back to what it was. We do not need a new stadium. Then on top of that, he made this decision around Dan Ashworth. Terrible decision, because I wouldn't have never let that guy go. He had a proven track record. What has Wilcox and Barada done, apart from nothing? Then you also, from there, had the contract given to Ten Hag. And personally, I was actually in agreement. I wanted to keep him on. He had not had a terrible season. It wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination, but he won the FA Cup. It felt like there was a little bit of belief there. I would have just given him longer, or given him less of a contract, whatever one that is. But they gave him this big, massive, long contract, paid him out for a load of money, and sacked him a few months later, which never made sense. And then you look at the managers we've had since. We had Moisey, and you should have, had more time. He was coming in to United at a time where fans' expectance was incredibly high, because we just won the season before we won the Premier League. And then obviously, we started to fall quite quickly. Terrible time for him to come in. Then from there, you've had Giggs. He came in for that short period. Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer, Carrick, Ruben Amorim. We'll get on to him in a minute. Ten Hag, of course. If I've missed anyone, please forgive me, because I can't even keep up at this point. Darren Fletcher. It looks like we're going to get Solskjaer back. And yes, he's a little bit of United, but I don't think that's the right step. I feel like it's a step backwards into a direction that we don't want to go. And what do we have now? We're going to have a temporary manager until the summer, which, has some logic behind it, because we've got the World Cup and a lot of managers then are out of contract. But that's not Manchester United, which is the whole point of this video. That's not Manchester United. United go and get the best manager. They have a structure, they have a purpose to what they're actually doing. But right now, it feels so reactionary. There's no process. There seems to be no understanding as to what they're actually trying to do. And it's an absolute mess. You look at Jim Ratcliffe when he did that interview, and he talked about Manchester United and, a process. What is the process right now? What is their plan? Apart from sacking a load of people, all of the money that they've saved, they've literally just paid out in compensation in Ten Hag and and Amorim, right? Just think about the savings that they've made. They've just gone and chucked it all back up the wall anyway. On top of that, what like I said, what is the identity? What are we trying to build? Those guys were to come in and start to build some stability in the football operations of Manchester United. And they've done the complete opposite. They've likely made it more of a mess from the outside looking in. With the Glazers, you knew what you were going to get. Absolutely nothing. And then you had a little bit of hope that Radcliffe would come in, build a bit of a team and start to move things forwards. And it's like 10 steps back. So like I say, I want to say this very clearly. This is not Manchester United. Whatever is going on, it's just not who we are. Because when I think of Manchester United, I think of leaders. I think of players on the pitch that are courageous, that are willing, that are wanting, and will give their life for the badge. You look at the way that people like Patrice Evra talk of Manchester United. You look at players like Rio Ferdinand. You look at players like Wayne Rooney. And of course, no other than Mr. Roy Keane. Right? Those guys were incredibly passionate, and I could have talked about a lot more. My favourite player, actually, that I didn't mention, Nemanja Vidic. Right? That guy was an absolute beast. Terrifying on the pitch. Who do United have right now that are leaders? We don't. The nearest leader that I can say that we've got on that pitch, perhaps, is someone like Alessandro Martinez. And still, while we call him the Butcher, he's still not on that level. He doesn't give off the same aura, doesn't give off the same energy. There's no one on that pitch right now when I watch Manchester United against Burnley the other night that feels remotely like a leader, that feels like Manchester United. The nearest to it was the guy on the bench, Darren Fletcher, and that was years ago. And I think part of the problem is Manchester United fans, myself included, we look back on the past, and Radcliffe, Barada, Dan Ashworth at the time, Wilcox were put in place to move United forwards. And they did that with the decision to bring Ruben in, because he played a completely different system with three at the back, the wing backs, that was, against the values of what Manchester United would stand for. So if that's the case, then move the club forwards. But no, what have they decided to do? Well, they're deciding to either bring Solskjaer in or Carrick. They've got Fletcher in as interim right now. And what are all those guys? They're Manchester United. They're the leaders that we think of. I say Solskjaer, he's not so much a leader, but he is a piece of Manchester United history that will never fade. So they're constantly always looking at the past. Whenever we look at an interim manager, we've had Giggs, Van Nistelrooy. We can't seem to escape that. You look at the other clubs, whether that's, Liverpool, Arsenal. They've evolved. They've moved forwards. You think of Liverpool legends. If this was Liverpool, they'd be bringing in Steven Gerrard. They'd bring in Robbie Fowler. Whoever it be relevant. Jamie Carragher, although, he's a bit of an idiot. But that's the point. Those guys have nothing to do with the club. But Manchester United can't seem to get away from it. Because it was so successful for such a long period of time with these players. It's like, let's bring them back. Let's bring back that aura of Manchester United. Let's bring back who we are. Let's start playing attacking football. Even Darren Fletcher in the interview is talking of Fergie. I absolutely love Fergie, But Manchester United still feels incredibly nostalgic of the past. And I think for as long as that happens, it's never going to move forwards. And now we're sitting here looking to the future. We're looking to the rest of the season. As a Manchester United fan, I'd be curious to know your thoughts. What are we actually hoping for? Because an interim manager until the end of the year feels just, like I say, reactionary, like it's filling a gap. It's not really what we want, but it'll make do. Where are we getting any joy from watching football like that? There's absolutely no joy in watching Manchester United now. And my gut tells me, by making such a quick fill gap decision, just fill that gap, it's there, we need someone in, and not really methodically thinking it through, we're just going to be signing up to more of the same. If Wilcox and Barada's job is to it's to run Manchester United downhill, they're doing a cracking job. They are doing the best job, because there's absolutely no direction as to where Manchester United are going right now. If anyone can tell me the direction of what Manchester United are doing right now, I'd absolutely love to know. Because I wouldn't have sacked Ruben. I would have just left him in place. I would have said, you know what, just leave him. But ultimately, he's come out, he's said the things. He was never sacked because of his results. He was sacked because he came out against the board. And they couldn't have that, could they? They could never have someone below them, in the food chain, talking badly of them. And they didn't like it, so what did they do? They went and sacked him, ended up paying a lot of money to do so. And as a Manchester United fan right now, it's painful, and maybe I'm being a bit dramatic, because there's other clubs out there that, have never even seen the success that we've had. But I think because I've been so ingrained with success from an early age, to now see it, it's like, this is incredibly painful. And it's frustrating, because just some basic things. You pay well over the odds for players, give them ridiculous salaries so they never want to leave the club. You keep players in that should be out the door. You make quick decisions. And I thought Ruben Amorim was going to be a guy that's going to carry us forwards, give the guy 3 years like Radcliffe said, but then he doesn't, sacks him after 14 months. So he's another one that you can't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. So my biggest thing here, like I say, is where are we going? What on earth is happening? I just don't know the plan. Everybody in business should have a plan as to where they're going. And Manchester United is no different. They are a business, right? They are an entity on and off the pitch. But on the pitch, there's absolutely no plan as to where we're going forwards. I could see it sometimes in some of the purchases they made with Lenny Yoro, Heaven, Sesko, although he scored 2 goals. I don't think he's been particularly great. De Ligt, I could see some of the changes they were trying to make. But aside from that, I've not seen anything else. I'm not expecting miracles, but I'm at least expecting some steps in the right direction. And this one right now of the sacking just feels like such a big move backwards. And it's like I say, it's not Manchester United. Manchester United runs with leadership and knows exactly where they're going, whether that's in the manager dugout or whether that's with the players. And if you believe Manchester United is better than this, then you're in the right place. This is the United way. This is what we do, right? So, like I say, this is not Manchester United. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts. If you haven't already, drop a subscribe for this channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you over on the next one.